Hey folks, it's Who's of Doom. This is a video response to Vince Venturella's topic of the week. As usual, I will link his video down below and you can check that out. The topic of this week is Warhammer World in the UK specifically, I guess, but also would we like to see a Warhammer World in the United States? Um, Warhammer World in the UK um, looks absolutely amazing, right? With the exhibits. So someone like myself that loves older models and kind of model history, it just looks amazing. And I know they rotate exhibits, and every time they do, it's like, oh man, I'm not gonna get an opportunity to see that specific, exhibit the way it was or whatnot. And really cool. I always wanted to go. Um, the fact that they have exclusive products is always kind of annoying to me because it's really difficult to get them unless you know someone that's willing to ship them to you or buy them off eBay for an inflated price or whatnot. And they're the only place to have a dedicated Forge World store, which is also very cool to see. And of course, they have very large gaming hall with you know beautiful, beautiful tables. Plus, you get to meet a bunch of the personalities from Games Workshop that you might see on Warhammer Live or just through the years in White Dwarf and so on. And so the opportunities there are really cool. And of course, if you're living in the United States, definitely a little bit of uh, the jealousy, I guess, when it comes to people that like live right in town and can easily travel to Warhammer World and play all their games there. I know that's not the case for everyone in the UK, clearly, but definitely a nice little perk. So I've been lucky enough throughout my relatively short lifespan to I've lived in 3 different countries by the time I was 25, and I've traveled around the world, visiting several different countries, and I've visited the UK, I think 3 times, but it's been a long, long time since I last visited the UK. And I think the last time I went, I don't think I was even in the hobby. If I was, it would be like the first year or two in, and I certainly wasn't too aware of the larger community. I don't know if they had Warhammer World or when that was actually created. Um, but if I had known, I definitely would have gone. Now, if I have future travel plans, I definitely want to go back to the UK and visit Warhammer World. Mrs. Hooves has traveled to Mexico and a couple other places, but she hasn't really traveled too much outside of North America. And so I would love to take her to UK because I have aunts and cousins in the UK. I have a passport for the UK myself, so I'm kind of always partial to going back there and seeing them and visiting the places that I visited when I was younger. And there's definitely lots of cool castles I would want to go back to see. But I would definitely stop by Warhammer World, probably for at least a day, maybe even longer. Get as many games in as I could. Just experience the whole thing and drag Mrs. Hooves along with me. Uh, I joke, of course, because she's actually very supportive, and I think she would love to go herself. So hopefully, I will get back to the UK. I know there's a bunch of people, viewers and subscribers, and people I know through YouTube that I would love to meet up with and play a game. So would I want a Warhammer World, the same type of experience in the United States? Absolutely, no question, bring it on, right? And there's no question, I would love to see it. Um, but I'm a little bit more pragmatic about it. And the reason why I say that is because I don't think it would work in the United States. I honestly don't. Um, and so I think you need to consider a number of reasons for why there isn't one. Obviously, the UK is much smaller than the United States. I think it's about the same size geographically as like Wyoming or something like that, which is one of the states within the United States. It has a fairly larger. Well, the United States has a much larger population, but the UK's population is fairly condensed. In other words, like there's quite a bit of people a for a geographic area of the UK. In other words, even though the United States has a, a fairly much larger population, it's spread out over a much greater geographic area. That makes it a bit harder to kind of get to. Um, Traveling long distances in the UK, I know, is a somewhat of a problem based upon um, experience kind of traveling in the UK. But I would say that you can kind of get to Warhammer World fairly easily from almost anywhere in the UK. That's not necessarily the case if they built one in the United States. You'd almost always have to get a hotel, and there's lots of other expenses associated with traveling. Of course, that's what people from the United States have to do anyways if they go to the UK, but it's a little bit different kind of experience. Currently the U.S. headquarters is in Tennessee. I'm not really sure how open they are to visitors. When the headquarters was in Maryland, I took a tour of the headquarters back then. They were a little bit more kind of open to having groups of people come through, which was really cool to see, kind of like the warehouse and where the models were being made in the United States. But I'm not really sure if they have the same open atmosphere in Tennessee as they currently do. Tennessee would be a more central location for the East Coast, but it doesn't really help someone from California or the West Coast. And if they tried to obviously put it in the middle of the country in the United States, not a lot of people live in Iowa and Nebraska and places like that. So you really do need to either go East or West Coast, which doesn't necessarily help people attend. I don't think. I think the U.S. is just so much more spread apart that the idea of going to Warhammer World to play a few games would always involve a more extensive um, travel itinerary than it would for many places in the UK. Um, but I think more importantly, and this might be a little bit controversial, I don't think a lot of Games Workshop stores are that profitable, including probably Warhammer World. Um, if you think about the amount of space involved and the amount of employees that are involved, definitely people are buying products and things like that. And the ratio, the how much they make on products is obviously more from their own stores than it would be an independent retailer. Um, but generally speaking, there's also additional costs in terms of space, utilities, wages, things like that. And I honestly don't think that they'd necessarily always exceed the amount to make it a really profitable venture. That's fine. I think most of the time Warhammer stores are largely built for indirect purposes. In other words, they have other uses beyond simply being profit making machines. I know they recently built a new store in Portland, Maine, where I was not too far away. And one of the main independent retailer stores went and had a chat with the guy and basically asked him, how much are you expected to make? And this was a very profitable independent retailer, and they were blown away by how much GW was expecting to bring in. Um, like I said, the margins are better, but they don't often. Well, they only have just one product, right? Independent retailer store has plenty of other tabletop games, but they also have tons of card games and board games, and they generally have a much bigger gaming area where people can hang out and play. And I think that's one of the reasons why Warhammer World is so unique, because if that was a marketable success, I think they would try to employ the same technique at most of their Warhammer stores, but they don't. They usually employ fairly small little stores, and they're lucky to maybe have between 1 and 3 tables, which is not enough to get a massive gaming group. They can't hold events at those stores. Um, I do think that there are great indirect benefits to their stores for bringing in new people and so on and so forth. But in general, I suspect that they're not necessarily massive profit-making stores, and part of that is the fact that they rotate their store managers so often because there's so much pressure to increase sales. But also the fact that not too long ago they were closing a lot of stores here and there as well. Of course, that they've changed that in recent years, and they're now reopening them. But I just think that that's something that is kind of a consideration. Um, I think if it were a profitable venture, if Warhammer World was, and if they seriously thought that the conditions in the United States were similar, they would build one immediately. Right? There's no question in my mind about that. But clearly, there's reasons for why they don't think it's something that they want to um, create duplicate Warhammer worlds around the world. Um, that said, I think it shows the success of Games Workshop, that they are the only you know tabletop wargaming company to have their own stores that are purely dedicated to their own product. And Warhammer World is just a unique mecca for the gaming for Warhammer players, insofar as it operates in many ways just as their company HQ, right, which is on the exact same location. And it demonstrates for investors and other people the success of their very small niche industry. That's all basically I have to say. I would love to have a Warhammer World in the United States. I just don't ever expect them to make that jump for a variety of kind of practical and geographic reasons. So I'll have to look forward, unless GW surprises me, I'll have to just look forward to visiting Warhammer World in the UK in hopefully the not too distant future. Anyways, have a good one.